A quick introduction to Mr. Hiten Mushala. Mr. Hiten Mushala has 28 years of business experience. He joined his family business of textile trading in 1992. Later, he set up another family business of plastic manufacturing in 1997 and manages it to the current date as a founding director. Teaching is his passion. He's a professor of strategy at SP Jain School of Global Management, Mumbai, where he teaches young entrepreneurs and preparing to join their family business since 2014. He speaks at various forums, conducts workshops, mentors entrepreneurs, and consults small and medium enterprises to grow. Impact of COVID-19 and subsequent lockdown will test the resilience of businessmen across the world. His firm belief is that the winner will be the businessman. And with that, I hand it over to Mr. Hiten himself to take the proceedings forward. Over to you, Hiten.
Thank you so much, Aditya. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Shahani, for inviting me to speak. It's been a pleasure to be on this platform at ISME. I welcome all the participants. And more importantly, I think this was something which was a pleasant surprise to me today morning, was this boy called Janil Shah. Janil, you amazed me. I have been planning to write one book since last 2 years. You have written 2 books in 2 months. This is amazing. And I think there's something that I need to connect with you and learn from you, right? Also, the kind of topics that you have picked up, entrepreneurship on one side, which is hardcore corporate world, right? You are doing a business. And at this age, you are connecting it with spirituality on the other side. And this is something which has, again, surprised me a lot. And I'm so happy. Of course, your parents will be very proud. And I'm sure the institute is more proud, equally proud as well. I can only say that it's a wise head on young shoulders. So congratulations, Janil. I wish you all the luck in life, and I'm sure that you'll do well. I think you have some extremely deep thinking, and you think really think through well at this young age, and that's what surprises me. And thank you so much. I'll start with the topic for today. I would just share my screen. Give me a minute. Okay, so it's all about facing an adversity in business and how do we think ahead. And I think this particular topic is of utmost importance and very critical, especially in today's times. And why is it so important in today's time? What is it that is happening around us? So let's try to understand what is happening around us. Sometimes around 3rd week of March, the government of India declared that we are going to get under a lockdown. And that lockdown can be for a prolonged period of time. It was not mentioned how many days or how many months. And most of us became very happy. We became happy because there were a lot of things that we always wanted to do in our life. We never found time. And suddenly we said, wow, this is a time where we can do things which we were not able to do. And the moment lockdown began, we started doing that. So somebody got more into physical activities, somebody into good diet, good food, good reading, spirituality, a lot of things. What happened now? What has been happening now? Have we still continued with it? And the answer for a large part of our population is no. What we have been doing of lately is getting completely involved and immersed into our gadgets. How much time are we spending on our mobile phones? How much time are we spending on our iPads? How much time are we spending on watching news on TV? And what is the information diet that we are feeding to our mind all these days now? It's all about COVID. How many people got affected? How many people died? How much facility government of India or the government of the world has created? How fast is this pandemic going to grow? And at the same time, we are feeding our mind with what is going to happen to my business. What am I going to do? And this is what is called as recency bias. What is recency bias? Recency bias is that the news that you feed into your mind, the current news that you feed into your mind, starts creating biases, and it starts clouding your judgment for future. This is precisely what has happened. Today, we are in the end of the month. And ask any businessman what is his issue now at the end of the month. He has started thinking, next week, how will I start paying salary? Next week, how will I start paying my rent? Next week, beginning of the month, how will I start paying my interest? Recency bias. All these problems that have been fed into our mind have started causing recency bias and is clouding our judgment. What is the way forward? We have a problem, that's fine. What is the way forward? Do we continue living this life? Do we continue thinking this way? Or should we think differently? How should we think differently? I'll give you one small example, and it's about our country, India. 1984-85, our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi got assassinated. And by 1991, another prime ministerial candidate, Rajiv Gandhi, also was killed in a bomb blast. And at that time, in 1991, PV Narasimha Rao government was formed. And for all these years, our country economically was not doing well. So by the time Mr. PV Narasimha Rao became a prime minister, he realized that India had foreign exchange reserves worth only next 14 days. How much was it? Less than $500 million at that time, which was equivalent to only 14 days of imports requirements. And what happened? Like a beggar, India went to IMF and World Bank. They said, we don't have enough foreign exchange reserves. Can you please give us money? And the World Bank and IMF said, we will give you money, but you will have to change. You cannot continue to run the country the way you have been doing for so many years. Your country needs to transform. What was this transformation? The transformation was that you need to open up your economy. You cannot remain a closed economy. And that is what came to be later known as liberalization. You need to close down on your permit Raj. Because in India, most of you will not know, doing business, every damn activity that you wanted to do required a permit from the government. And that led to a lot of corruption and red tapeism. They said, you have to abolish all this. You have to change, badlao. And that is what we did. Today, our foreign exchange reserves are almost $500 billion in a matter of 30 years. We were at a point in time where they were less than $500 million. Today, we have $500 billion almost, approximately, as on today. And what happened to our businesses? Our businesses suffered that time. Please go back and ask your parents, ask your father, ask your uncle, ask your grandfather. क्या हुआ था अपने business में उस time पे? What had happened? How did you suffer? 1991 was a year of suffering. The moment liberalization was announced in 1992, it was followed up by the demolition of Babri Masjid. And that was followed up by serial bomb blast across the country. So the country was completely under economic chaos between 1991 to 1993. 3 years. And yet, if you see your business, it has prospered. Your business has prospered despite suffering for 3 years. And that shows that we have what is called as resilience. We forget this word. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from a very bad situation. And this needs a resilient mind. And this is the need of the day for all business people today. We need to be resilient. We need to have a resilient mind. So naturally, the question is, how do we become resilient? We are plagued right now by recency bias. How do we become resilient? Resilience comes from what is called as critical thinking, which we don't do these days. And what is critical thinking? Critical thinking is asking some really tough questions to our own selves. And these three questions are very simple, but the answer is pretty tough because we need to challenge our beliefs. And what are these three questions? The first question is question the obvious. What is obvious in front of us? Let us question that. Second one, question the approach. What is our approach towards that problem? And third one is question the priorities. How do we lay down our priorities? Three questions to ask. And that is the formation of critical thinking. And critical thinking leads to a resilient mind. So let's try to critically think about what is happening today with us. So we take the first question the obvious. What is obvious in front of us and in front of our eyes? What is happening around us today? And to understand that, let us try to understand what global adversities mankind has faced in the past. Past is the biggest guru to help us understand how we have faced them, what kind of adversities. So let's look back at history. And when you look back at history, and what I've tried to do is go back historically for last 100, 120 years, and you'll see all these events right in front of you on the screen. 1914, World War I, 1918 to 1920, something called a Spanish flu, which I'm going to cover up in after the next two slides. 1929, Great Depression that hit us. 1939, World War II, and so on and so forth. To as recent as 2001 terrorist attack in New York, and 2008 global financial meltdown. What is common between all these adversities? What is common? Three common factors. The first factor is that all these events were unpredictable and surprising. Nobody was able to predict that World War I will start. Nobody was able to predict that World War II will start. Nobody was able to predict Spanish flu will happen or Great Depression will happen. Second, all these events had worldwide impact. It didn't impact or affect one particular country or continent. It affected the whole bloody world. And the third one, post these events, once the events were over, people started believing that it was actually always predictable, avoidable, and explainable. What you see on the screen is a black swan. It's a swan. And yes, it's black. How often do we relate ourselves with a black swan? We always say white swan, right? Never a black swan. And yes, that's correct. It was until 1967 when a Dutch explorer who went to Australia, Western Australia, was the first one to spot that swans can be black in color. So until 1967, humans believed that swans can only be white, never black. And that's the limitation of our mind. We are limited, our mind ability of thinking is limited by the information and facts that are in front of us. And that one is beautifully captured by one of my favorite authors, Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Nassim Nicholas Taleb was a trader on the New York Stock Exchange. And he realized that all these things are a limitation to human mind. And once the events open up, once we understand that instead of white swan, there is a black swan, people start behaving differently. And that triggers a different kind of behavioral impact towards the event. And that's why he calls these events as black swan events. And what is black swan event? A black swan is an unpredictable event that is beyond what is normally expected of a situation. Black swan events are characterized by their extreme rarity, severe impact, and widespread insistence that they were obvious in the hindsight. COVID-19 that we are facing today is, according to Nicholas Taleb, Nassim Taleb, is a black swan event. And how does it affect us? How does COVID-19 affect us? The first and obvious is the health. How has it affected our health? So I have picked up this from the internet, and I've mentioned the source on the bottom left corner. And this is the latest update. 58 million people across the world as on today are affected by COVID-19. And so far, 358,000 deaths. Did something similar happen in our past? Has some kind of this event has happened, such kind of black swan event? And the answer is yes. Almost 100 years ago, there was another virus called as Spanish flu. And though it is called as Spanish flu, trust me, it has nothing to do with Spain or Spain's king. Only thing, the Spain's king was ill, and this Spanish flu came into being when the World War I was in progress. And there are similarities between Spanish flu and COVID-19. Spanish flu, the facts were hidden because of World War I. Facts were destroyed. So as on today, we have no idea about how many people died, but there is an estimate that anywhere between 17 million to 100 million people have died, not infected, died. These are a massive scale. No vaccines were available. It was the first time the medical fraternity had just no clue how to handle it. People had no clue how to handle it. So we face something similar in the history of our mankind. What is the other impact of COVID-19 on us? One is health. The second one is wealth. And what is the impact of COVID-19 on the wealth? Global GDP, the GDP. So, and let me explain to you in very simple terms. I don't want to get too much into details, but what is GDP? GDP means the sum total of all businesses of the whole world put together. In very simple layman's language. I don't want to get too much deep into details. Which means if you add your business, my business, other people's business, we are doing a business globally of 82 trillion US dollars. And of which US contributes around 28 trillion, Europe 20 trillion, China 16 trillion, Japan 10 trillion, and rest all countries put together 9 trillion. How does COVID-19 affect this global GDP? It's unprecedented event that we are in a state of lockdown. And not we, by saying we, I'm not saying Maharashtra or India. I'm saying we as a world. The world is in a state of lockdown. Unprecedented, first time ever. And world has been in a lockdown for last almost 2 months. And you are all business students. 82 trillion US dollars of total trade in the world for 1 year, which means per month is about approximately 7 trillion. 2 months of lockdown means 14 trillion worth of trade is wiped out. That's the kind of impact of COVID. And Goldman Sachs published this report, and I'm just going to read the headline, which says that it sees 34% plunge in US GDP and 15% unemployment. This is the kind of impact. Did something similar happen in our past? Yes. The Great Depression of 1929. In the Great Depression of 1929, which started from US, the US GDP fell by estimated 15%. And it affected both rich and poor countries, everyone, nobody was spared. And unemployment in US rose to 23%. Personal incomes, government tax revenues, business volumes, and profits dropped. International trade fell by more than 50%. Aadha ho gaya international trade, global trade. Heavy industries were hit hard. Construction virtually halted in many countries. Farming crop prices fell by 60%. Can you believe this? And commodities prices saw massive erosion. And with all this happening around us, and with the recency bias of all the news that we are putting into our mind, we start thinking that world is going to end. Everything is collapsing. The moment I start my business, demand is going to collapse. My price points are going to collapse. My cash flows are going to collapse. And these thoughts of recency bias are putting us in what I call it as a discomfort zone. So we are all in our houses, we are all in the luxury of our houses, but our mind is under highly discomfort zone. We are feeling very uncomfortable within ourselves. All business people, we are not happy. Dar hai man mein, discomfort hai. So the question is, what do you do now? Question the obvious. And we've understood what is the obvious. COVID-19 is a black swan event, and it is severely affecting health and wealth. Fair enough. Question the obvious. We've understood it. So let's go to the now second part of critical thinking. Question the approach. Now, what should be my approach towards my business? So let me question my approach. And what is this approach? Very simple. 3 ways to think. The first one is what is called as pessimist thinking. The world is going to come to an end. Everybody is going to die. No businesses are going to survive. It's a doomsday for the world. My business is also not going to survive. I cannot handle my business. This is what a pessimist will classically think. Let us respect this thought for a while. Let us respect it. Everybody has different ways of thinking, okay? So 3 ways to think. This is the first way to think, pessimistic thinking. Let us respect it and let's try to analyze this. Critical thinking. Let's not just brush it aside or be judgmental. And to prove whether pessimistic thinking in current situation is right or wrong, what I've tried to do is I've plotted Dow Jones Industrial Average for last 100 and 120 years. Now the question you may ask is, why Dow Jones? Well, there are a few reasons. One reason is that Dow Jones belongs to USA, and all these past events that have happened in last 100, 120 years, US has been a very important integral part of each of these events. So US was very strongly affected by all these events. Second question you may ask, why again Dow Jones? We will all agree that stock markets and stock price movements and index are the real mirrors of the economy. And Dow Jones somehow mirrors what US economy did. And when we see this graph, starting from the bottom left, which is around early 1900s, to the top right, which is almost at current date, it has just gone up. Is pessimistic thinking correct? The chart proves no. It has not only gone up, it has gone far beyond its previous highs. So if we will remain a pessimist today, it's not going to help us. And history is proving it. Not Hiten Muchala. History is proving it. So what is the second way of thinking? Naturally, the opposite of pessimism, which is optimist, Ashavadi. Kuch nahi hua hai. Nothing has happened. Everything will bounce back. The wave, the speed at which it has fallen, it will come back equally with the same speed. I'm not going to change anything because nothing is going to happen to me. This is how an optimist will think. And again, let's not be judgmental on this thought. Let's respect this thought and again try to understand whether this is the right way to think. What I've tried to do is I've tried to plot the same graph, but this time with some more details in it. This is the same graph, Dow Jones Industrial Average. The additional information that I've put is the recovery time that it took. Things fell down, and then they recovered. But what was the time that it took to recover? And the graph shows that the first time, on the bottom left that you see, it took 19 years to recover post World War I. Post World War II and Great Depression, it took 25 long years to recover. Cold War era, it took 16 years to recover. Finally, the last one, which is the financial meltdown, the collapse in 2008, it took almost 6 years to recover. So my question is, if we try to be optimistic, कुछ नहीं होगा, मुझे कुछ change नहीं करने की जरूरत है, I don't want to change anything, no need, nothing is going to happen to me. Is it going to work? What if the recovery takes far longer than what we expect? Recovery is going to happen for sure. What if it takes far longer than we expect? Are we going to survive in that time? And that makes me believe that optimistic thinking, again, is not the right way to think. So what is the third way of thinking? And there's this British poet who had written this poem, and I love it. And I've picked on this small part. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. And mind you, he's talking in relation to a sailor. This is something that he wrote about 120 years ago. And he's written it about a sailor. So the pessimist complains about the wind. The sailor is complaining about the wind. Wind is not there. हवा का रुख नहीं आ रहा है. And it's not going to be windy. How will I sail my ship? The optimist expects it to change. Nothing will happen. Wind will start coming in. I'm waiting for it. It will happen very soon. The realist adjusts the sails. So what does the realist do? The realist doesn't bet on when it is going to happen, when the winds are going to change. He starts adjusting the sails of his ship. Badlav, transformation, change. That is what a realist will do. And his mindset is, he's aware that he's in discomfort zone. And he's equally confident that from discomfort zone, he has to move to a zone of growth. Today, I'm handling my business. I'm uncomfortable. This is not where I want to be. I want to grow my business, come what may. I'm a realist. I want to grow my business. But before moving from discomfort zone to growth zone, he does something called as the third question of critical thinking. Question the priorities. What are the priorities that I need to look at? How do I need to change? How do I need to adjust my sail? This is the tough question that he starts asking himself. And trust me, this journey is very simple. Adjusting the sail. All you need to do is take 7 steps. These are the 7 steps that I thought about for myself, because students kept on calling me and I said, how can I make this more simple? And that's how I thought this is a 7-step framework. All you need to do is take 7 steps. That's it. What are these 7 steps to adjust the sail of your business? The first one is accepting the situation. Accepting the situation that current lockdown may last longer. And trust me, these are the slides that I made 2 months ago. And that time I had no clue about how long this lockdown is going to last. But it was a realist way of thinking that current lockdown may last longer. Demand may not come back as expected in my business. Restoration of supply chain will also take much longer time. Health fear will lead to social distancing for a long period of time. And these are the things that I need to accept if I want to be a realist. The first step. And how does this differ from a pessimist and an optimist? A pessimist over accepts it. अरे ये तो सब खत्म कर देगा मुझे. Whereas an optimist completely ignores this. Nothing is happening. But a realist accepts it. The second step is believing. Believing in whom? Most importantly, your own self. I've done this before. I can do this again. My father has done this before. We will do it again together this time. We will recover. Believe in yourself first. And second, believe in your business. The activity, the trade, the business, the commerce that I'm doing, or the idea that I have as an entrepreneur to implement, I very strongly believe in it. So I not only believe in myself, I also believe in my idea. Besides believing these two things, learn to believe in medical science. The medical science is working hard. We will have some solution. Something what Janil mentioned today, spirituality. Believe in your own immunity system. We are going to recover. My own body immunity is something which will fight out the disease. And more importantly, most important of all is believe in your government and believe in your central bankers. Trust me, they are far more alert and agile than what they used to be 100 years ago. They know it's a big issue and we need to believe a lot in them. So it's the second step is about believing. You may feel fine, fair enough. This is all spiritual talks. It's more philosophical. करना क्या है मुझे? Business में क्या करना है? And that's precisely where the third step comes in. And before that third step, a realist takes step 1 and 2, and he understands that to travel to growth zone, he needs to first survive because he is not sure how much time the recovery will take. So the third step will be about surviving, irrespective of how long is the recovery. And that's where he tries to understand what is called as scenarios. What are the different scenarios that can happen to my business and my economy? And I've mentioned these 3 letters, English letters. First one is V, second one is U, and third one is what we call as an inverted L. How does this have a relevance with our scenario planning? The first one is V. V is what is classically called as a V-shaped recovery. A V-shaped recovery means the speed with which it has fallen, it will bounce back with equally same rigor to its original position. This is called as V-shaped recovery. And classically, a V-shaped recovery in financial industry is recognized as something that happens in less than 1 year. Things come back to its normal in less than 1 year. It's called a V-shaped recovery. The second one is U-shaped recovery. U-shaped recovery means things have fallen, they will stabilize at a bottom at a certain level for some time, and then they will start to recover quickly. And when something like this happens, it's called as a U-shaped recovery. And again, the financial industry classically defines this as any period between 1 year to 3 years. It's called as a U-shaped recovery. The last one is inverted L. Inverted L means things have fallen very fast and they take really long time to recover. They don't recover so quickly. And even when they recover very slowly. It's a long time. And this is called as L-shaped recovery. And L-shaped recovery is anything which is beyond 3 years. It's called an L-shaped recovery. Now you are a realist. You want to adjust your sail. So you're not trying to bet whether it is going to be V-shaped, U-shaped, or L-shaped. Being a realist, I will look at this. What is the worst case scenario? And the worst case scenario is an L-shaped recovery. And I'm a realist. I'm going to adjust my sail based on L-shaped recovery. Let it take 3 to 5 years. I'll assume that it's going to take 3 to 5 years. I'll position and reposition and re-engineer my business based on L-shaped recovery. I'll align all my resources, assets, people, processes based on L-shaped recovery. So in case V-shaped recovery happens, I'm going to benefit. In case U-shaped recovery happens, I'm going to benefit. This is how a realist thinks. The fourth step, motivating and communicating. Just like you and me, we need to understand that the people who work for us in our company, in our factory, in our warehouse, in our retail shops, all are sitting at home. The difference between you and between us and them is we do not have fear of money. We have enough wealth. We can look after our daily lifestyles. But for them, it's a big question. And this has brought a lot of insecurity in their mind. How will I pay the rent of my small room? How will I pay for the education of my child? Will I lose my job? What if I lose my job? Will I get another job? So the right thing is to actually reach out to them. And there are so many ways to reach out to them. You can reach out to them through WhatsApp. You can have video calling with them. You can even create your own videos and communicate to them. You need to give them a lot of moral support that we are there. So more communication with them, it leads to better motivation. And this is the right time to handle your own people. But at the same time, I'm doing my business. I need to be profitable. I cannot just keep on making payments to my people. I cannot give them salaries and expect that I also do profits. What do I do? As a businessman or as an entrepreneur, I need to make some tough choices. And some of the tough choices that I have listed down here, if it can help you, one is hold back your yearly increments and adjust your paid leaves against whatever absenteeism you have today. This is one thing. Second thing, cut down any additional perquisites that you offer to your employees over and above government rules. You can cut them down and you can be very clear about it to your people. Some of you may be thinking of reducing the salaries of your people, and that is also fair. But in doing so, we have usually two types of people. One are temporary and one are permanent. The people who are temporary with us, the reason we have kept them on temporary payrolls is because there was a specific job which we wanted them to do. We didn't want to employ them on permanent basis. So those are the people you can definitely remove. But if there is a humanitarian ground to it, you can either try to upskill them and transfer them to your other departments or give them recommendations. That's up to us. That's more human. What will you do with your permanent people? And within permanent people, we have two types. One which we can define them as high paid and one which are low paid. The right strategy will be to cut down salaries of people who are highly paid. And at the same time, maintain the salaries as much as possible of the low paid workers. Because these are the people, low paid workers, who have day-to-day issues. They have issues of buying groceries, ration, rent, so many things. And trust me, if you take care of your people at this stage, they are going to take permanently care of your business. Before you initiate a cut for your people, take cut for yourself first. Give them a signal that this cut is not meant for you, it has started with me. And that gives a very strong signal to everyone that yes, my boss has taken the cut first. The cut can also be assured in terms of a deferral. You can say that we have temporarily cut your salary, but the moment the pricing power and the earnings power of my company will come back, I assure you that I'll pay you back this month. So it depends on how fast we bounce back. And also give them assurance that their increments and perquisites will be reinstated immediately once the earning power is restored. So it's all about being very transparent in your communication with your people and in turn, motivating them, because that's something that they need the most right now. And this is the most important critical step towards achieving growth. Because if people don't support you, you're not going to grow. The next step is adjusting sale. What is adjusting sale? I need to generate cash because right now I have a cash constraint. For where does cash come from? Because right now my customer is not going to pay me on time, but I need to pay to my suppliers. I need to pay to my people. I need to pay for utility expenses. I need to pay towards government obligations. मुझे तो payment करनी ही है, but payment I'm not able to receive them. One of the most critical area where you should look at right now is your own inventory, because inventory is nothing but cash in a different form. Can I sell my inventory by rationing my old customers? And what do I mean by rationing? Can I sell it to those old customers who are going to pay me very quickly? Again, I don't want to give them too much of credit. Or can I identify new customers who can pay me on cash terms? And in doing so, I'm trying to generate more cash. Second thing is purchase. How do I adjust my purchase? Because if my inventories get over, I need to make fresh purchases. And the moment I make fresh purchases, my suppliers are going to ask me to make payment to him quickly. One area is, can I reduce my product width in current times? It's adjusting your sale. Or can I create back-to-back arrangement? What do I mean by back-to-back arrangement? Can I buy something which I've already sold? Which means the material doesn't stay in my house. It's back-to-back. Can I control my purchases? Because this is very important part. These days, you will find your suppliers tempting you with very low prices. वो बोलेगा आपको कि price बहुत कम हो गए हैं, ले लो आप, ले लो. Do not get tempted by low prices. Only buy what you require. Only buy what you sold. And then important part is negotiate. Negotiate with your suppliers for your old payments, where you can ask him for cash discounts. And you can tell him very openly that, listen, I want cash discount because my buyers are also asking me for cash discount to make my old payments. And it's fair enough, we need to adjust, we need to handle each other. Ask for better cash discounts on your new purchases. And trust me, you'll get some good bargains. Look for reducing your fixed costs, such as rent, interest on loan, because these days the interest rates are falling. Bargain with your bank for a lower interest rate if you have debt on books. And when you do all these things, what you are trying to do is you are trying to generate more cash. You've done this much. And with this, you know that you're going to survive. Now that survival is whether V-shaped, U-shaped, or L-shaped, you're going to survive. But you want to grow. And to grow, you need to identify opportunities. Which means you have to now get into the opportunity zone. And that is specifically what step number 6 is all about. Cash positioning. Can I make my cash positioning stronger? Because in these times, cash is going to be king. And how do you improve your inflow of cash? Again, I've mentioned a few things. Can I sell my unproductive assets? What kind of unproductive assets? Dead or slow moving inventory and stocks. Old machineries, unused property. Can I sell them? And I know what is question in your mind. Sir, how can we sell them? The prices have fallen. Mera wo asset tha, I had that asset. I was offered 3 crores market value that time. Right now, even if I go and try to sell it, I may hardly be able to sell it at 2 crores or 2.5 crores. Prices have fallen. I can't sell. And that is what I've mentioned in red color as anchoring bias. This is another bias that happens in our mind. We are so much anchored to that higher price that we've seen that it prevents our mind from selling something at current rates. Avoid anchoring bias, because right now cash is king. The more cash you generate, trust me, you are going to tap opportunity which will make far higher return than what you've lost. The second one is if you don't have borrowings, can you look for some fresh working capital loans from your bank, which will help you to survive through, which will create that cash buffer? Or if you have new demands from your customers, can you outsource? I'm a distributor. Somebody has come to me, sir, do you stock masks? Do you stock the aprons? No, that's not our business. Why that's not our business? Why can't we outsource them? Just a food for thought. How do you reduce the outflow of cash from your company? Reducing outflow is, can you replace expensive loans with cheaper loans? Can you cut down on your discretionary spends? Can you defer your expansion plans and capex at least for some time? I'm not saying shelve, I'm saying defer. Can I defer them? Let me understand. Let me see how things are progressing, and then I'll take them again. And the fourth point is pay smart. Delay which payments and how much? What do I mean by paying smart? Pay, for example, if you have all statutory obligations, pay to government the last. There's every chance that you'll get a lot of advantages from the government. Especially when there are no penalties involved, there are no prosecutions involved. Please pay government last. You don't need to pay government right now. You can pay them later on. Interest bhar denge. We'll pay interest. Government is like a financer to us at this point in time. And that helps me to conserve cash. These are just few of the ideas. Of course, there can be many more ideas, but I just thought I'll sanitize you with a few ideas. That is step number 6. And once you do this, you are now preparing yourself for the growth zone, which means you are trying to now get into the step number 7, which is opportunity hunting. Because by this time, I have a set of motivated people with me. I believe a lot in myself and my own business. I have cash reserves. And now I'm going to start hunting for opportunities. What kind of opportunities are we talking about? And one of my very dear colleague at SP Jain Global, who teaches marketing, according to him, consumer behavior is going to change. And consumer behavior, according to him, he has come up with a 3S model, which he calls it, which is consumer is going to focus on 3 S's: safety, security, and space. And he's going to pay more for it. Can that be an opportunity for me? I have cash. I have my resources aligned. I have people who are highly motivated. Can I tap those opportunities? How about you are an exporter in your business? You always wanted to export to that one excellent country in Europe, which was very high profit making country for you. But whenever you used to approach that customer, he used to tell you, no, sir, sorry, your country is infrastructure starved. We are buying from another country, which is closer to you. And we are getting excellent supply chain. We have no issues with them. How about trying with them now? His behavior must have changed. If you are a distributor or a trader and you always were trying to talk to that one principal whose products you always wanted to distribute, whenever you approached to him in the past, he always used to tell you, sorry, sir, in your territory, I already have somebody and we are very happy with him. How about approaching him now? You have cash. There's every chance that that particular distributor or trader is facing problems. It's an opportunity for you. How about you always wanted to buy that adjacent piece of real estate next to you if you were a retail shop, and that landlord or the owner of that property always used to refuse you? How about trying now? How about acquiring some skilled people from your competitors? You always wanted that star sales performer of your competitor. You always wanted to acquire that technician who belonged to that factory of your competitor. You approached him several times to join you and he refused. How about approaching him now? I'll give you one very simple example. One of our students lives in Thane and they run a restaurant. And naturally, like all restaurants have shut down, his restaurant shut down by the 3rd week of March. This is real case. Now he had a huge restaurant and he had a huge kitchen with a huge storage facility. So they used to stock the vegetables, groceries, and all other stuff for at least next 15 days to 1 month, the critical parts, the critical requirements. Now there was a sudden shutdown and they closed their restaurant, and he lives nearby. He lives in the next building. Now 1 week passed after the shutdown, and this is a real case story. It's very interesting. 1 week passed, and naturally the supply chain for the vegetable vendors was not established. So everybody was facing issue of how do we get vegetables to eat at home. And these people had no problem, because they used to go down to the restaurant, open the fridge, take out the vegetables that they required and bring it home. So one day his neighbor calls him and asks, how do you manage yourself? And he says, we have vegetables in our restaurant, so we bring it from there. Can you supply me some? And yes, naturally, like you are a good neighbor, you will help your neighbor. And the neighbor says, I'll pay for you, pay for it. They did that to the neighbor. The neighbor paid, but this news spread like wildfire in his society. And everybody starts calling this student of mine. Can you supply us vegetables if you have little more stock? We'll pay, we'll pay, we'll pay. And that is what they started doing. They started distributing vegetables. From that, they got an idea, the father and son, that we have an excellent supply chain. We have excellent relations with the direct vegetable vendor. We are sourcing from the right place. Why don't we start a business of distributing vegetables? And believe me, in last 2 to 2.5 months, they have no time. I spoke to him last week and he told me that me and my father were actually asking each other a question. Why the hell are we in the business of restaurant? Why not in the business of distributing groceries? Opportunity. You don't know how opportunity will come to you. But you need to be a realist. This is what happened. So this is a framework that I've developed, which is, I call it a 7-step framework to growth. Accept, believe, prepare yourself for the worst, which is scenario planning. Motivate your people, communicate to your people. Adjust your business, cut down on your costs. Create very strong cash position in your company. And 7th is, once you have this, opportunity. I know you have another, still you are not convinced, all of you. You are still not convinced. ये सब ख्याली पुलाव है, सब बातें हैं. It's all on paper. Business में कैसे होगा? Does this apply, this framework, to small and medium businesses where I belong? Does this apply? I'll give you one more example. Again, this example happens to be of one of my students. His name is Iqbal Singh Chima. He has a factory in Chandigarh. And what do? They're into infrastructure capital goods. His company's name is Chima Boilers Limited in Chandigarh. And as the name suggests, obviously they're into boilers. But along with boilers, they have another 2 divisions. So one is the boilers, and boilers are 3 types of boilers that they manufacture. One are low pressure boilers, which are small in size, which have smaller ticket size. One are high pressure boilers for big industries. And one are what they call it as cogeneration boilers, which means these boilers not only produce steam, but they also generate electricity. So 3 types of boilers. This was one division. The second division was EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction. And what did they used to do in this? If somebody wants to set up a project, all that the customer has to do is to give him the entire designing, architecture, and layout of the plant. They will set up the plant for that customer completely, turnkey projects. That is what they call it as EPC. And once the project gets commissioned, customers pay them, and that's where they make money. This was second division. And the third division was a very small division, which is services. Services for what? Obviously boilers. They were manufacturing these 3 types of boilers. And if, let's say, you or me purchase the boilers from them, we'll need to service them, right? At some point in time, there's some kind of breakdown, some repair, some upgradation, something we require. Call them and they'll send it. Servicing, very small division, 3 divisions. In 2009, they were manufacturing these boilers. And what was the data? This student had a turnover of 225 crores in the year 2009 and making a profit of 20 crores. And the order book at that time was in excess of 300 crores, which means it was fairly well established. 2009 business acha ho raha hai. I have orders until almost 2011, 1.5 times my current sales. I'm comfortable. It's extremely comfortable position. And then in 2008, the global financial meltdown happens. That is something that happened globally. Black Swan event. But along with that, there was another Black Swan event happened in our own country, and which was the coal scam. If most of you remember, in 2009, there was a huge coal scam. And that coal scam was to the extent of 1,86,000 crores. Such was the enormity of the scam. And obviously, his business was connected with all large infrastructure projects. What will happen to his business because of these two things? What happened in 2013? Just fast forward next 4 years from 2009. The order book dried. Infrastructure capex came to a halt. Commercial banks became cautious lenders. And because of which the infrastructure project stopped because पैसे ही नहीं मिल रहे थे banks के पास से काम करने के लिए. But during all these 4 years, he saw that the low pressure boilers kept on selling, but the high pressure boilers and the cogeneration boilers, their sales dropped down to 0. His most important division, 3 product range, 2 completely stopped. Only 1 survived. And what happened? What was the impact on his finances? His turnover fell from 225 crores in 2009 to only 95 crores. And profits, from making a profit of 20 crores a year, his company made a loss of 3 crores. And which was the biggest expense to him? Salary. His salary outflow was almost 2 crores a month. And his second biggest expense was interest. Interest on working capital. He had taken working capital loans to manage his EPC division, engineering, procurement, and construction. And that was hitting him hard. And the orders on hand were 0. So what was his key concern of my student at that time? His key concern was, how do I create a constant pool of financial flow from my current business? I'm a realist. I believe in myself. I accept the situation. I believe in myself. I believe in my business. And so from my business, how do I create a constant pool of financial flow? How do I reduce the dependence on fixed cost nature of my business? Because fixed cost of salary, fixed cost of interest, major costs. And once I do this, how do I improve my margins, reduce cost, and reduce working capital? These are the key concerns that he faced. Critical thinking. Question the obvious. And the obvious was in front of him. 2008 financial meltdown. Accept the situation. Coal scam. Accept the situation. Question the approach. Pessimist, optimist, or realist? And he says, I'm going to be a realist. Question the priorities. Priorities are, I'm going to accept what is happening around me, but at the same time, I believe in myself, my business. I'm going to reposition. What did he do? He started looking at all the 3 divisions of his business. Paisa kahan se aa raha hai? Where is money coming from? I have 3 divisions. Of these 3 divisions, which is the division that is even in today's current time is bringing money to me? And he was highly surprised and shocked. The smallest of the division, which was services division, had a 3 crores of revenue in 2013. But it made a profit of 2 crores for him. And that's where he saw, paisa to yahan se aa raha hai. Money is coming from here. Rule number 1, focus where money is. And what did he do? He started approaching all customers and started telling them, it doesn't matter whether you own a Chima boiler or a boiler of any other company, we will service it. He was the first one to do it in his industry, because Thermax and all other manufacturers only kept on servicing their own boilers. He was the first one who went out, approached even other customers and said, we are prepared to serve you. We will serve you. We are not only going to serve and repair your boilers, we are also there to modernize them, do retrofittings in them. We are also there to help you do engineering audits for your boilers. We are offering you a complete gamut of services around boilers. And not only Chima boilers, any boilers. And in doing this, what he did was, he moved a large part of his production team. He didn't retrench anyone. Kisi ko nikala nahi usne. He moved almost half part of his team and applied them on the servicing of boilers, because they were experts. They used to produce boilers. And those who produce boilers can serve the boilers even better. Applied that half of the team there. He looked at the second division, EPC. And this is where he realized that EPC was a bloody cash guzzler. It was eating into my cash. Maximum of my working capital requirements were happening because of EPC. Why? Because the customer is paying me only after I commission the project for him. Till that time, paise mere lagte hain. My cash is getting applied. And it's a low margin business. Long credit terms. Rule number 2, cut down what drains my money. And what did he do? He brought down this EPC to a skeleton level. What is skeleton level? He started approaching his customers and told them, do one thing. I guarantee the installation and commissioning of your project. But what I'll do is I'll directly tie you up with the equipment manufacturers. Direct tie-ups. I'm not there. My profits you will save. You directly negotiate with them. You pay them directly. But your entire commissioning is my responsibility. I'm responsible for it. And all you need to do is you need to pay me a separate commission, a fees for it. I will supply you the critical part, which is my boiler. That is what I'll supply to you. Then he started looking at his third division, which was his boiler division. That's where he realized that low pressure boilers kept on selling. The other two stopped. Rule number 3, focus what sells for me. And sometimes before, in step number 6, I said, rationalize your inventory, rationalize your product range. That is precisely what he did. He cut down, he completely stopped manufacturing of high pressure boilers and cogeneration boilers. He said, let me put my entire man, machine, expertise, money, resources on only low pressure boilers. पूरी मार्केटिंग टीम को उसने लो प्रेशर बॉयलर्स पे लगा दिया. बोला जाओ जाके पूरे इंडिया में जाके बेच के आओ. You only have to sell one item, which is low pressure boilers. So he focused on low pressure boilers. And in turn, his sales increased from 60 units to 150 units a year. He became the largest manufacturer and supplier of the low pressure boilers in the country. In turn, it led to economies of scale. And in turn, he became a cost leader. What is his company today? The services division today, from 3 crores of revenue, contributes 35 crores of revenue. And look at the profits it's contributing. 2 crores of profits to 20 crores of profits. Today, even in this worst times, he's saying, I have no problems. My services division is the division which is keeping my company safe. Constant flow of cash in my company. The EPC division, which was brought down to skeleton level, the working capital requirements dropped down from 25 crores to 10 crores. And even today, in these tough times, it remains profitable. And low pressure boilers, 150 units per year of sales. And he earns the highest margins in the country because of his low cost, because of economies of scale. Can you resonate this case with this particular framework? He accepted the situation. He believed in his business. He motivated his people by not removing anybody. He upskilled them. He moved them to other departments. And then he started readjusting, replanning, re-engineering his business. And that was to create cash position, which led him to opportunity. So 7 steps to growth. Just follow this. That's all. Critical thinking. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. I am the boss of my business. I am responsible for all the decisions I take. It's up to me to decide whether I want to be a pessimist, an optimist, or a realist. And before I conclude this session, one very powerful dialogue. छोटी छोटी बातों से पूर्णता होती है और पूर्णता छोटी बात नहीं है. So with that, I end this session. Thank you very much for listening to me. And over to you, Aditya. We can have the Q&A.
Right, sure. Thank you so much, Hiten. That was really very comprehensive and insightful. I'm sure a lot of students have been making active notes, and not only students, I'm sure a lot of faculty have also made some really active notes. I will just summarize the whole thing so that it's a quick flashby for all of the viewers. We started with Resilient Mind, talking about the Black Swan, and obviously you went through the Black Swan events one by one, how that fits into the COVID-19 scenario right now. And then really getting into, how do we look at critical thinking through those 3 questions. Those are the 3 lenses, I would call them. Obviously, question the approach. What's the right way to think? Optimistic thinking, pessimistic thinking, and being a realist in the end. Obviously, questioning the priorities, the 7-step approach. So you obviously started with accepting the situation, believing, scenario planning, and you made a very comprehensive, in-depth analysis of the cases that you use. Motivate and communicate with your employers and your people at work. How you adjust the sale, cash positioning, opportunity hunting, and obviously the case studies on Chima boilers. And focus where the money is. Basically, that should be the prime focus when we talk about opportunity hunting in the end. And focus what sells for me. So those were the 2 big insights that came out from the case. And one very quick question that comes right from the audience, very short question, and I love it. Is it a good time to start up?
It's not a good time. It's the best time to start up. Okay. If you look at most of these very large companies, including Uber, Google, Microsoft, and I can send you a list of those companies. All those companies started in situations which were extremely negative, economically negative. And it's the best time to start up because it's the best time to get great deals.
Okay. You spoke about, various opportunities and kind of skills to develop. So can you name at least 3 key skills for FMB students, family managed business students, that they should consciously develop over the due course?
I think most important of the skill is managing people. Okay. Because what happens is today we all need to understand that we don't go to our factory to open the gates. We don't go to switch on the lights, right? We don't go to sell the products. We are owners. We are the bosses of our business. We have a 360-degree view. We need to manage teams. We need to manage people. So I think people management is one of the most critical skill set. That's one. Second thing is managing processes. And I think this is where most family businesses and entrepreneurs lag, to be honest. We need to introduce right processes. And by processes, what I mean is not only processes in terms of SOPs, but also in terms of implementation of technology. Somehow, somewhere, I have realized that in the era of globalization and technology, family businesses have remained little behind. And that's what an endeavor of the new generation should be. how do we bring in that technology? Because obviously their father or their uncle or their grandfather have not been technology friendly, and they have kept away from it. So I think these two core skills, if the new generation brings it in, I think it's going to work wonders.
Right. You just spoke about generations, and one question that has just come in: a lot of family businesses deal with various levels of generations or different generations, and you see a lot of stress building up within, just anxiety or stress, you may call it, within handling your own houses first, homes first, and then the businesses. So, according to you, since you've taken on to the spiritual and the philosophy path as well, what is it that would be a suggestion from your end to keep the spirits high in the family?
See, I think first is what the current generation or the new generation which is entering the business needs to understand is to have a learner's attitude. What happens is that when they study from any university, they start challenging the status quo in their company, not trying to actually understand what is it that has gone inside their company. What is it that their mentors have done in their company, right? And it is about learning under your father's shadow first. Because at the end of the day, you are going to be the owner and your father is going to transfer that business ownership and management to you. But unless and until you don't learn under his shadows, you cannot step on his shoulder to take the next leap for your business. So it's very important that you should have a learner's mindset. Try to understand how the business has been steered over the last 20 years. Understand the history. I think the starting point is understanding history, how their mentor has faced adversities in life and how they've emerged victorious. That's one of the biggest learning for them.
Right. So this would be the last question in terms of the time constraint that we have. One must-read book according to you other than The Black Swan?
Oh, there are so many. There are just so many. But a few books that come to my mind is one is what is called as Value Migration, which is by Adrian Slavodsky. A lot of values are migrating within our industry, within our business, from one business to another business. And it's important to understand what is it that brings this value migration and how do we prepare for it. Most of the businesses are not able to change, especially family businesses. They continue doing the way they do their business. But value migration is one of a very strong concept that is emerging today, okay, and which is forcing the businesses to change. So that's one thing. Obviously, there are other books like Innovator's Dilemma, which is again from a very great author, Christensen. And I mean, I can share a lot of other books with you.
Sure. I think that comes to an end. And if you have any closing remarks, like we say in business, do you want to close the deal or seal the deal? If there's anything that you have to say towards the end.
No, I think my end slide is something that I would repeat again, because you need to do small things in your business. छोटी छोटी बातों से पूर्णता होती है और पूर्णता छोटी बात नहीं है. Have that patience, keep on doing those small incremental productive things in your business, and eventually all the dots will connect together and you will have a strong competitive advantage.
All right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate all the insights. Over to Dr. Shahani.
Thank you so much. I don't know how the time passed so quickly. I was making furious notes. After a long time, I've sat through a master class and really enjoyed every bit of it, And I think I would just finally sum up everything by saying that life gives you lemons, squeeze them and make lemon squash and go ahead with your life. But I think I love this bit about pessimist, optimist, realist. Let me tell you, these are three states of minds which exist with us simultaneously. And sometimes you're feeling, very pessimist about something. At the same time, you're feeling optimist about something else. And you have to bring this balance down all the time to realism. And that really is the challenge. Whether it's in business, it's in your personal life, or it's in your careers. I think students, this is a great lesson for you today. So with this, I would say, thank you so much. And we're going to see you more often because we do hope that you will take up a good chunk of, I'm sure Professor Amaya will be after you to help us,
Yes,
direct and channel our, family business program. So thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed it. Thank you, Hiten. Thank you so much.